what am I doing in the kitchen now? Well, as you know, I was already red-pilled, but I think now with the recent actions, everything that's been going on, I am further towards the black pill now. So Google that if you want. You'll see what it means. But I figure now we got what we voted for. So Canadians voted Trudeau in for a second time, and we are now seeing what we are paying for. So through our taxes, we have been locked in our homes like most of the world for about 6 weeks now. And in addition to this, there was a mass shooting in Canada 2 weeks ago, and the Trudeau government responded by very quickly ushering in changes to the gun legislation. So that means they came out with a list of 1,500 guns or variations thereof that are now considered to be illegal to own, operate, transport, buy, sell in Canada. What that means essentially, and I'm going to get to why I'm in the kitchen, so let me just address that really quickly. Actually, you know what? Let me address it while I'm in the kitchen. It's just going to make it easier for everybody and a lot quicker. I'm in the kitchen here because my black pilling has now led me to believe that our government is headed full socialist, full totalitarian in a matter of months now. And what I want to spend the next few videos doing is showing you tricks that I've learned on how to operate in a new totalitarian environment that we're going through. I don't think we can stop it anymore, so I'm just going to try to give you tips. So today I'm going to make sourdough bread. I have a few ingredients measured out. The reason sourdough bread is really important and you need to learn to make this now is because it's a very, very filling bread that only requires 4 ingredients, and you could even get away with only 3 ingredients if you were in desperate times. So we're going to get to that. So quickly, the sourdough recipe I'm using today is just 5 cups of flour and 2.5 teaspoons of salt and 1 cup of sourdough starter. There's lots of amazing YouTubers who will give you a lot of explanations on how to make that. I have it right here. This is what it looks like. It's like a bubbly kind of like pancakey type syrup, I guess, yeast that you're going to put in there. And when you run out of yeast, which a lot of places now have run out of yeast, this is what you're going to use. And then just water. So you can see how simple it is. Now, as I'm finishing this up and mixing up, and I'm going to show you the technique to get this done right, I'm also going to talk about this gun thing that just happened. Hopefully the clanking here is going to be kept to a minimum because it's, maybe I'll just become an ASMR YouTuber, who knows. Anyways, okay, so the gun registry thing. So it means that if I can break it down to the most simplistic, basic form possible, it essentially means that now Trudeau has basically said, our government is going to decide what you guys have in your house, and even if you obtained it legally, now we've made it illegal, and you are going to now have to turn it in, or else you're going to become a criminal. So they're giving the owners of the guns from that 1,500 list of guns, and by the way, I reviewed the list and there's a rocket launcher on there, as if that wasn't already illegal. Anyways, it's kind of ridiculous. I think they made it look like, oh, look at that, 1,500. Like, how can you possibly review all 1,500? Like, a lot of those things were already on the list. So anyways, and maybe it was rocket launcher, grenade launcher, I don't know. But so what that means is the government has now given itself total power. And I really hope Canadians are going to react to this one. If we don't, we're going to be totalitarian in a span of about 3-4 months, would be my guess, simply because of how fast the Trudeau government has used both the COVID-19 as well as now the mass shooting in Nova Scotia in order to push things that are totalitarian in nature. So they have done this, and what this means is now they can take stuff from your house without asking you, things that you legally own. So that it means that essentially whatever you think you have a right to, you don't. The government at any point could come. So for example, I have seedlings, and I'm going to make another video about that one, but they could come in and say, you know what, those seedlings you own and that you grew and legally bought, well, now it's illegal for you to have them because we need them for the greater good. That we need them over here with us. So you cannot have this as a private citizen. You have no right to this anymore, so we're just going to take it. And the same thing is happening if you've noticed all the discussion around the vaccines. Oh, and by the way, it's 1 cup of this fresh yeast that I'm using in here. I don't think I mentioned that before, but 1 cup for 5 cups of flour. And it makes about 2 loaves. Okay, so the vaccination that you started to see is a very scary situation that's happening, because they are talking as if there's no going back to any kind of normal until you get vaccinated. And that means to me mandatory vaccination coming our way. So now they can take your property, which they're doing with the guns. They can lock you up in your homes and prevent you from coming out, which is what they're doing with the isolation. And they can also decide what goes in your body. And that is where the totalitarian aspect of this is complete. So before this whole thing happened, they had already decided, at least in Ontario, I'm not sure if it's like this everywhere in Canada, but they could also take away your kids if you didn't provide them transgender transitioning drugs when they're not 18 yet. So it's a very scary situation, and now I think in the last week, the government has shown us that they are completing the totalitarian aspects of all of this. So tepid water, mixing it in, and it's 1.5 cups. So I'm just gonna mix this in, and I'm gonna keep going off on this. So the reason you're gonna wanna have these kinds of skills, I mentioned that this bread is very nutritious, very filling. So when we get shortages, which we will, because what this isolation lockdown is doing is destroying the economy. And I don't know how long it's going to take for the economy to fix itself. It depends on how much free market is injected in there. If it's a socialist free market, that doesn't work. If it's socialist market, it means the government will control things, and it means that we will get more and more shortages and on everything. And that means normal things are going to become scarce. And that includes even power. So there might be some times in the day you don't have power anymore. That's a very real possibility, so prepare yourself for that. As well, I will make another video on that one, how to prepare for cyclical outages of both power and phone lines. So this is where you want to be prepared. This bread I'm making here today is going to be something that you are going to need to fall back on when there are all sorts of shortages. You may almost need to fall back on it right now if there are shortages of yeast where you are. Sourdough is a pretty cool thing to make. So I've just mixed my 4 ingredients in here, and you can see it looks like a very messy, like not really ready kind of thing, but it's important to knead this, and it's going to be about 10 minutes of kneading. Kneading is where you shape it into a ball by kind of like attacking it for quite a while. And a lot of people say this is a good gym alternative. So there you go, you're making bread, you're staying healthy, you have something to provide for your family that's nutritious with very, very little ingredients, and it's perfect. And a lot of people, the bakers, will say, well, you can't, you need to take your anger out on the dough. But I would not recommend you think about Trudeau and take your anger out on the dough, because the dough will not like this and will punish you by not rising, because Trudeau can actually ruin everything. Everything he touches can be ruined. So there you go. Let me just show you what it looks like as I start kneading it, and then we'll come back. So this is what the dough looks like. It's not very promising, and you think, oh my gosh, this is such a mess. But what you're gonna do is, as you knead this, it's going to slowly shape into a beautiful dough. At this point, when you start this, you want it to be a little bit sticky because you have some very dry parts on the outside, as well as on your table that you're gonna scoop up. When it's going to be bread shortages, food shortages, and we are already getting prepared for that, because the lineups to the grocery stores are very, very reminiscent of the bread lines that you would see in the Soviet Union. So in a way, we are kind of being groomed in order to be able to accept this. So now they have, the government has forced all private property and private owners, private businesses, to operate a certain way on their own property. They have to have people 6 meters apart. My friend went to the bulk barn the other day, and she said that you had to wait super long outside, and then they would let you inside to go one at a time, and you had a shopper with you, like one of the bulk barn employees was with you, and he would scoop everything on your behalf. So you would just point and scoop, and you have to hurry up because, you know, the line is so long outside, and if you take a long time, it's kind of not cool for everybody else out there. So this is where it's very important to to understand that we are being prepared for this. I was just thinking, wouldn't this be funny if somebody started the video at this point of the video and I just see somebody rolling a ball of dough? It'd be quite funny. But anyways, so you can see that this dough is already looking much more beautiful, like an actual bread. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep doing this for 10 minutes. Alright guys, I'm almost done with this dough. And I wanted to just mention 2 things before I put it in a bowl to proof. So the first thing is you could do this with the dough hook if you have an electric mixer, but you want to get used to not using any kind of technology to make this. I know the oven is also technology. We may come to a day where we need to do this in a wood oven outside or a pizza oven, something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but it is a real possibility. So you want to, make sure that you understand how to make this without an electric mixer. This will allow you to get you a really good feel for when the dough is starting to form, and you know you can let it proof. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if any dissidents like myself get hauled out to a gulag or a concentration camp, one of the best places to be in those scenarios is near the kitchen. So make sure that you use this time in isolation to get used to cooking and understanding the basics of food preparation so that you have a skill. And you know what? If I'm wrong about all of this, it's not so bad. Oh, look at that. If I'm wrong about this, and I really do hope I am, but at least you have some new culinary skills now that you've learned in quarantine. So, okay guys, so this dough here is done, and what it needs to do for the next few hours is proof. I'm going to put it back in this bowl here, and you're going to take a nice clean towel, put it right on top, and leave it. Leave it for about 5 hours. That's what I'm going to do, and in 5 hours I'm going to come back, show you what it looks like, and then I'll show you the next steps in this. See you soon, guys. Alright guys, we're back, and I'm going to show you the bread now. It's been about 5 hours since I left it, and there you see it, beautifully developed, doubled in size. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it for the second proofing now. It needs a second proofing, and what I'm going to do is divide it in 2 so I can make the 2 loaves, and then we're going to let it proof for another 2 hours. So here we go. I'm just going to cut it here, reshape this ball, and I am pretty sure that if I were to throw this ball at my neighbor, it would be declared an assault weapon. And maybe if I use like enriched flour, it would be like a military grade assault weapon. Who knows how this could be classified? So anyways guys, just a nerdy joke because I'm a dork that way. Drop this into a bowl. I have a pre-floured tea towel in here, and I'm just going to drop it in here and wrap it. And there we go, we've got one done. And I'm just going to do the same to the next one. So all I'm doing here is reshaping this. And I'm going to drop it in the bowl. And I wanted to explain really quickly why it is that we are going to have the food shortages. So the economy right now is collapsing. And depending on if it's going to be the market that picks up, or if it's going to be the government that takes over, the market picking this up would be, the free market, I mean, would be the the best possible outcome, because what's going to happen is, even if you used to buy your bread from your local baker, the problem is he probably won't be able to afford to run his bakery anymore. This is just the reality. When you have an economic collapse, right, like we're about to head into, all the smaller mom and pop shops won't be able to survive. A lot of them, sorry, I shouldn't say all, many of them won't survive this economic crash. And what will happen is they'll be forced to shut down, or potentially maybe go on the black market and just like bread on the black market for a while. But there's going to be, because of COVID-19, intense regulations around any food production, as well as very, very strict measures to take in terms of distancing and all that. So, and an increase in taxes to pay off for the bailouts that we're giving everybody right now. So they won't have the money to sustain their operation for a long time, neither to deal with the additional measures that are going to be forced upon them to deal with this COVID. So these poor mom and pop shops of every nature, they are going to be pushed out of business, and you're going to have the ones that are left over. So like the big bread producers, I'm just going to pick on bread as an example because that's the topic of the video today, but the big bread producers, they are going to keep going. However, because there's no mom and pop competition, the prices might go up, it might be a lot more expensive, and that's the best case scenario. So it's going to be a bit less variety, more expensive bread to make up for all of the measures that these big companies are going to implement. Even though they can afford to, it's still going to reflect itself in the price of the bread. And in the worst case scenario possible, what will happen is the Trudeau government could take over the nationalization of the industry. So that means, if we stick with our bread example, they would nationalize the bread production, and this is where we are going to see famine arrive. So there's going to be shortages, there's going to be famine, bread lineups, the hyperinflation is going to cause it so it's going to be like $1,000 to buy a loaf of bread when it's available, and then it's no longer going to be available. So get ready for that. Prepare yourselves mentally for this. This is why, if you have any ability to make things at home yourself, just start changing your thinking to prepare yourself in case this is what happens. And you think it's crazy because we're in Canada and nothing bad ever happens here, but you know, the reality is that in the history of the world, tons of bad stuff has happened, and more recently governments have turned on their own populations en masse. Europe, Africa, everywhere. So and Trudeau has disarmed us now, so we are definitely going to be seeing that we can't do anything against it once they turn on us. So get ready for that. In the meantime, I'll see you guys soon when we do the next rise of bread and pop it in the oven. So see you guys in 2 hours. Alright guys, we're almost done, promise. Here we go. The time to put the bread in the oven. Now turn your oven on 450, and you can place like a little oven-proof dish in there that has water so that it can steam up the bread, so it keeps it nice and moist. Speaking moistly. Anyways, so we will score the bread now right before putting it in the oven at 450 for about 30 minutes. So here we go. I just took it out of my bowl. I'm going to flip it upside down and lift very gently. And I'm going to do the same thing with the next one. So very gently. Going to flip it upside down. Actually, I like the other side on this one better, so I'm going to flip it back over. And with a sharp knife, very sharp knife here, I'm just going to score the top very, very quickly before I pop it in the oven. And just make a nice cross because I don't really have too much artistic skill to do the really cool fancy ones, but if you want to look on YouTube, you'll find some people that can do really cool sourdough bread scoring. So there you go. That's it. Make sure it's in deep enough. My knife should technically be sharper. This is not great, but there we go. We're all done. So in the oven, 30 minutes, 450, and I'll show you when it's done. And then that's it. We've done our first sourdough black pilled bread for when you need to get a lot of nutrition, but there are some food shortages. So learn this now, and hopefully we'll all be okay. All right, guys.
This is what you get. This is what